Hi, and welcome back to another episode of ADK Talks. I'm Jane, along with my co-host and brother Steve, and we bring you the best of the Adirondacks. Whether it's a place to stay, eat, shop, or something to experience, we're your guides to discovering the amazing things to do in New York State's 6 million acre Adirondack Park. Today, we are delighted to have a repeat guest. We're welcoming back the good folks at the Adirondacks Center for Loon Conservation, based in Saranac Lake. We last spoke in September of 2024, and it's been one of our most downloaded episodes. So we wanted to circle back with them and find out what's going on and what's new. And turns out there's a lot of stuff happening. Joining us once again is Denise Silphy, Director of Education and Communications at the Adirondacks Center for Loon Conservation. Welcome back to the podcast, Denise.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
For those who may not have listened to the first episode, let's just set the stage a little bit. Can you just provide a brief overview of what the Center for Loon Conservation is all about, what you guys do?
Sure. Well, you might have guessed, but the Adirondacks Center for Loon Conservation is all about loons. Our whole goal is we really want people to learn about loons. We want to help people see loons in the wild responsibly. We want to kind of introduce people to the research we do about loons that helps us understand our Adirondack Lake ecosystems better. So yeah, we're just all about, helping people connect with this species that is iconic to the Adirondacks. And we do that through our research efforts, our conservation efforts, and our education and outreach.
When it comes to the research, what are some of your critical priorities right now?
Sure. So there's a lot, and I'm going to be the first to admit that I am not a biologist. So I can give you kind of the overview. The big one that we kind of got our start with is loons are biological indicators, which means that when we study loons, by studying them, we get an idea of the health of the whole ecosystem. So we use loons to study the presence of environmental pollutants in Adirondack lakes, the big one being mercury. That's the research that we got our start with, and it's the research that is ongoing that we continue to do. So every time we capture a loon, we take blood and feather samples and we test those to see the presence of mercury. And increasingly, we're also looking for PFAS or forever chemicals. And then, we can understand kind of what's going on in the whole lake by studying loons in that way. And then we also do a lot of research that's just looking at loon nesting success and generally threats to loons in the environment that helps us understand, the changing environment, climate change, all those things that are kind of going on and affecting lots of things in the Adirondacks. So yeah, those are some of our big ones. We study loons we study loon behavior through nesting cams. So we set up nest cams where we get to kind of watch loons behave without us right there. And then we also hire lake monitors who go out every summer and they monitor specific lakes and specific loon pairs and collect a lot of observational data for us as well. So yeah, those are kind of our big ones.
Okay. Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the Loon Census that's coming up in July? Because I think that's a really interesting project.
Yeah, so that's another kind of part of our research that we do. The Loon Census is held the third Saturday of every July. It is basically 1 hour of time, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., where we recruit volunteers to go out and basically count loons for that 1 hour of the whole year. And basically what we're looking for is to create a snapshot of the whole loon population. So it's a pretty big thing. People get really excited about participating in it. Last year we had, I think, close to 400 volunteers who went out on different lakes. And again, you're just going to one lake. It can be any lake in New York State. Some lakes are more likely to have loons than others, but any lake in New York State is open to participate in for the census. And you're counting those loons, taking a few notes and returning those into us. And then we use those, we compile them over time. And, after, I don't know if we're looking at a decade's worth at a time, but basically the time is what gives us the good snapshot of the loon population. And we can kind of analyze those numbers and figure out if we think the loon population is stable. We look at the number of adults versus chicks versus juveniles and kind of get an idea of, just how the loon population in the Adirondacks and in New York State is doing overall. So it's really important for us and for understanding at a population level how loons are doing. So yeah, we're still actively recruiting volunteers for this year's census. Census. It'll be on July 19th from 8 to 9 a.m. And you can find more information on our website under our science tab on our website. And there's a whole, you can click and learn how to sign up and how to participate. And there's also some communities around the Adirondacks hold, like special after the census, little get-togethers or parties or celebrations. So people get really into it, and it's kind of a cool opportunity to participate in community science. So we would love to have more people sign up.
That's cool. I know. This is a good time to mention the URL for your website. It's adkloon.org, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, and listener, it's full of really good and interesting information, and we're going to talk a little bit about the events that are happening or organized through the center, but in a few minutes. But it's definitely worthwhile to check it out. But back to the census, any trends that your researchers are seeing or anything that you can share with us?
Yeah, so I think we're in one of those moments where we're not ready to kind of make any grand announcements right now. Honestly, I'd have to check with our research biologist what the intervals are that we look at. So we're not quite ready to make a big observation. I will say that one of the things we observed from the 2024 census is kind of a higher, more adults. There's a lot of adult loons and maybe a little bit fewer chicks than we would expect. So yeah, we're kind of looking at, that the percentage of lakes where young loons have been observed has been gradually declining over time from at least 2021 to 2024. So again, we like to have more years to look at, but that's one of the things we've noticed after our data collection last year. So, and we don't know any of the specific reasons for that yet, but that's some of the information we end up gleaning from the census. And that's why it's so important to us.
Yeah, definitely. I know when I first heard about the census last year, I immediately was like, oh, I want to do that. And of course, somebody would have already volunteered on Loon Lake. Do the volunteers need to be in a canoe or kayak, or how are they observing?
Sure. It really depends on the lake. So some lakes, like really large lakes, actually will have teams of volunteers that go out to cover the whole lake. Other lakes, if they're small enough, sometimes people can observe loons from the shore with just a good pair of binoculars. And then other times, people go out in a self-propelled boat, like a kayak or a canoe, or they might take out, a motorized boat if they have one. It really just depends on the size of the lake. We are not picky about how people observe the loons. So yeah, it just depends on what you have available and the size of the body of water that you're assigned to, or that you choose to do the census on. It
makes me curious, and you may not have this information at your fingertips, but do you have a sense of how many lakes in the Adirondacks? A rough percentage, like 50% of the lakes in the Adirondacks have loons, or 10%. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. I know.
We generally say there's about 3,000 lakes in the Adirondacks.
Right.
So I'm not sure if I would feel comfortable making a guess.
That's fine.
But a lot of them.
Okay. That's fine. Last time you were on the pod, we talked about your lead tackle buyback program. How is that still going on, and how is that doing?
Yeah, so we are still offering the lead tackle buyback program this summer. So what that means is if you are an angler who is ready and interested in making the switch to lead-free tackle, you can take any lead tackle that you have and take it to a participating tackle shop. You can turn it in, they'll collect it. Ultimately, we then collect it from the tackle shops and recycle it, but you can turn it in there and you'll get a $10 voucher that you can use to buy non-lead tackle to replace it. So in theory, the program, it's a great program. We're finding that it's not as successful as we would like it to be. So this year, we're going to make this year our last year for it. At the moment, we're going to put it on pause. The lead issue is a really big one. It's one of the leading causes of death of loons everywhere, not just in the Adirondacks. Right. So it's still something very important to us, but we want to make sure any program we're offering is successful. So, we got some vouchers in the last couple years. Each year we get vouchers in, but not as many as we're looking for. And I think my theory is that part of this is because a lot of lead fishing tackle is still legal in New York. So, we just have a little disconnect between, what's allowable and what's actually causing harm. So right now in New York State, lead sinkers that are a half ounce or less you're not supposed to be able to buy them, or you're not supposed to be using them. However, bigger fishing tackle is also a big threat to loons, specifically like the jig head hooks that have, the lead weight soldered onto them. And a lot of people don't think a lot of people think the sinkers are the big problem. But what we're finding is that when we do x-rays of recovered loons, loons that have died, and we've recovered them and sent them to DEC to be necropsied, what we're finding is actually fish hooks in their gizzards as the cause of death. So those are still very legal. It's really hard. What we're going to try to do is work on a communications, kind of plan for how we can better educate everybody. And we're also working on a few other programs that we hope to roll out either end of this summer or early next summer, just to, giving out free lead tackle boxes to kids. We're working with Maintain the Chain, which is an organization out of Old Forge. They're helping, they're supporting us in putting together some lead-free tackle boxes that we can design some programming and, help educate kids about it. So we're working on a bunch of other things to kind of, and maybe we'll bring the lead tackle buyback program back, but we feel like we need to catch up on our education and communications to make it a little bit more successful. So it's still there. This is a great year to turn in any of your tackle that you might have and get your vouchers. I think we have again this year about 30 tackle shops around the Adirondacks participating. And we have a full list on our lead tackle buyback program page on our website. It's under the conservation tab of our website. So you can go there and check out what tackle shops are participating. And yeah, last year we collected 26 dead loons.
Oof.
And, they get necropsied and examined for all kinds of causes of death. But lead is tied with trauma, general trauma. So general trauma could be natural trauma from loons fighting with other loons. It can be human-caused trauma from a boat strike. So trauma is a really big category for a cause of death for loons. And lead is tied with that as our two biggest causes of death for loons. So, it matters to us. We think it's a really important one. It also affects other wildlife, not just loons. So we really want to, ramp up what we're doing and how we're working on that issue. So that's where we're at with lead tackle. Yeah, the buyback program this year.
The pictures, and I don't know if I've seen them on your site or other places, because I kind of got really deep into this topic last year when we were talking about it. The pictures are really heartbreaking. The x-rays are really, it's sad. And listener will put links to all this stuff in our show notes. And you can also, if you're interested, we went really deep into this in our episode with Denise last September. So I'll provide a link to that episode too, if you want to take a listen to that, because it's a really important topic. And I think also, as you just said, Denise, it's not just loons that this affects, and, we will also just, who wants lead in your water anyways? So
yeah, it's also, it's a threat to human health. Various other reports and studies have found that, lead poisoning is still a leading cause of death from environmental pollutants for humans. It affects humans differently than it affects birds. So it takes longer to accumulate in a human's body before it starts to have deep effects on us. But, it's just not a good thing for anybody. So
yeah. Okay. Lead, bad. We got that down. Let's move on to a little bit happier topic, the Loon Center in downtown Saranac Lake, which I had an opportunity to visit last summer, chock full of really interesting information about loons. And you have a really cool loon gift store. So talk to us about some of your exhibits and anything, happening there. Because I know you told us last time that over 10,000 people visit the center every year, which is really cool.
Yeah, for the size of our, center, that's great. We love that.
Yeah.
I think we're on track to have more visitors this year. So we're really excited about that. Yeah, the Loon Center, it is free. So anybody can come in, and take a look around. This one, a really exciting thing is that this past winter, we actually installed the first of 4 brand new exhibits. So these are like museum quality exhibits that we worked with, a professional design company to create. And we are going to get 4 of them in total. We installed the first one this winter. So, once we get the other 3, we will be a proper museum dedicated to educating people about loons. And the exhibits, the goal of the exhibits is to kind of follow a loon through a year in the life of a loon. So the exhibit we just installed is about courtship and nesting. It has some cool interactive features for kids. And yeah, we think it's great. It's bright, colorful, big pictures, lots of great information. And, of course, we still have our taxidermied loons on display, and the biggest, getting to see them up close that way. The biggest comment I always hear is that people say, like, I never knew they were so big.
Yeah.
So there's lots of cool stuff to learn from at the center. And then you're right, we do have a loon gift shop where we will sell you anything you can imagine with a loon on it. So
it's in a former bank.
It is
so
a former bank.
So it's actually, it was larger than I thought it was. I know you said it was small, but I actually thought it was pretty spacious. And we probably spent, I don't know, 45 minutes there. I love these. And first tangent of the podcast. I call these like pocket museums or pocket galleries, these little places that, you don't have to devote a whole day to going to. And I may have mentioned this last year. The other place in Saranac Lake that is really cool is the Tuberculosis Laboratory Museum, where Edward Trudeau did his incredible, groundbreaking work on finding a cure for tuberculosis. And when I suggested going there with the friend I was traveling with, my bestie Pam, she was like, where are we going? And she wound up thinking, when we left, she's like, I'm so glad we did that. That was really cool. So if you're in Saranac Lake, are you open year round?
We are open year round. We do change our hours. Summer and winter, we change our hours, but we just changed our summer hours so that we're now open 7 days a week from 10 to 5. And but you can come visit us all year round. Of course, in the summer, that's when the loons are here. So if you're really excited about, maybe seeing a loon out on a lake, we encourage people to come in the summer. You can learn all about them, and we can, kind of tell you a good place you can go to maybe see loons yourself. So,
well, speaking of that, I was looking at your events calendar. It seems like there is something for everyone. One thing I noticed, and I know I think you've been doing this for a while, you guys do guided paddles. And you're also offering a photography workshop today. Tell us more about that.
Yeah. So we do guided paddles, which is just an opportunity for, I think visitors, when they come up here, they might not spend a lot of their time paddling, as much as people maybe who live in the Adirondacks do. So we provide a chance for you to go out on the boat and see the loons in their natural habitat. You get to learn all about them from one of our guides, and with the added bonus of, seeing them in their natural habitat and learning just about the natural history of the area in general. So those are our regular guided paddles that we offer a few times throughout the summer. We have one coming up this week, actually, on Thursday from 10 to noon. You can sign up for that if you go to our website as well, if you happen to be in the area. And then we have several other ones throughout the summer. And then our special paddle event this summer is going to be on August 9th. We have a wildlife photographer. His name is Andrew, and he actually, years ago, he actually worked at the Loon Center. So he is uniquely qualified to take people out on the water and learn about the loons here in the Adirondacks. And also he's going to provide, anywhere from basic to more advanced instruction and guidance on photography, on responsible wildlife photography, on just like tips for using your camera to capture the best shots of wildlife. So we're really excited about that. And we hope it's a good turnout. It's kind of a new, we're giving it a try this summer, and if it goes well, we'll offer some more. But there will be 2 sessions offered on Saturday, August 9th. There will be like a sunrise session and an evening session, since that's when the good light is. So if anyone's interested in that, again, the information's all on our website under the paddles page, guided paddles. But yeah, we're excited. We think this is a good opportunity for people of, any level, any interest in photography. You don't have to have the craziest equipment, but if you have some pretty basic equipment, you can come out and learn a little bit and learn about loons and take some photographs with someone who can provide some really great advice about how to do it.
That's very cool. Go ahead, Steve.
I had a quick question, and the exhibit on nesting sort of brings me to it. And that is, if someone is a lakefront property owner, large pond, small lake that isn't too densely populated, is there something they can do with the shoreline that would help facilitate nesting or encourage loons to consider a spot to nest?
Yeah. So the biggest, one of the biggest or a threat to loons is the loss of nesting habitat. I probably mentioned in the last time I was on that, a kind of a surprising fact for some people that loons can't walk. They can't walk on land. So because of that, they nest right on the edge of the water, like inches from the water line. And that's so that they can get in and out of their nests, easily, since they can't walk around to nest further away from shore. So yeah, when people develop the shoreline too much, that can be a way of taking away nesting habitat. I know I've been out on some bigger lakes where there's wind and there's wake from boats. So people they build kind of like rock walls around the shoreline.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that's really bad for habitat.
Yeah.
So, those are considerations that people can make. Loons really they're pretty tolerant of people in some ways. So they'll nest, they might nest fairly close to people's property, but they really like to have, some tall grasses. They need sticks and mud to build their nest, and they need to feel safe is the big thing. So, having just that natural vegetation helps them to choose a nest site where they also feel like they can nest safely. So, I do talk to people and say, anything you can do to leave, those natural shorelines, that's great for loons, and it's great for lots of other species as well. So yeah, it's a great question.
I just had another question. It's totally gone out of my head. It's about nesting. As something else that you said. That was actually a really good question, Steve.
Okay, I'm done.
I'm out. Steve out. Yeah.
Got my one question.
I think that also brings me to another point about it triggered something that we talked about last time. And, I think you guys, the center, does a really great job educating and reminding people to respect loons' space. In our last episode, you gave some excellent guidance on how far away to stay from loons and to, just be chill. Like, don't try and encourage loons to come to you. Is there anything else, what are some other reminders about that or tips that we can give our listeners?
Yeah. So, we really want people to be able to see loons. We don't want to tell people to stay away. But we just want people to do it responsibly. So, and like I said a couple minutes ago, loons they're pretty tolerant of people. They see people. Some loons on busier lakes are incredibly tolerant of boats and people because they're just used to seeing them. So yeah, and we tell people that if you're out on a boat, like a kayak or a canoe, and you see loons, it's okay to approach them, but we ask people to stay like about 100 feet away, 150 feet away. And then loons are curious, and there's a good chance they will, they'll dive underwater and you'll be looking for them and they'll pop up right next to your boat because they just want to check you out. So yeah, we tell people, like, if you're calm and if you're not a threat, loons generally will just go about their business and you have the chance to just watch them kind of doing what they do. They have some really kind of charismatic behaviors. They stick their heads underwater to look for fish, which I just think is kind of funny looking. They love to stretch. They stretch their legs and put their legs out of the water. They stretch their wings. They roll over on their backs and they preen and they bathe. So they're fun to watch. And if you just kind of are still and you don't chase them, if you chase loons, they will outrun you, and you'll just chase them away from you. So we tell people just be calm, be quiet. Kind of paddle about a little lazily, and loons are more than likely just going to hang out around you anyway. One big thing is I mentioned that we use nest cams or game cameras to watch loon nests. It's part of our research. And unfortunately, those nest cams also sometimes capture some really bad behavior. Sometimes they capture, people like pursuing loons or chasing loons in boats, or people crowding nests. And that's, not great. Basically, if you're crowding a loon nest, if you're too close, you run the risk of forcing the loon to abandon their nest, and then they might not return. So we tell people that if you see a loon on a nest, to try to give them extra space. Kind of some behaviors you can look for is to know if a loon is feeling threatened or distressed by your presence. If they're on a nest, they sometimes will put their heads down really low to the water. And we call this a hangover position. It might be that they're trying to just get really low so they're not visible, but it's also a position where they can easily abandon the nest and get in the water, to safety. So if you see a loon like putting its head down really low on a nest, that's a distress symbol. Also, sometimes they'll pant, they'll open their beaks and it looks like they're panting. And they sometimes will do that if they're feeling distressed as well. So, if you pay attention to their behavior, then you can modify your own behavior to make sure that, you're not causing them to feel threatened. So yeah. And also, on the nest cams, sometimes we capture people picking up and examining loon eggs.
Oh,
So please don't do that.
That's What idiots? That's crazy. Can you, okay, this
can you access these cameras? Can the public access these cameras?
No, they're not streaming cameras. We would love to get a streaming camera, and we're actually one of our staff members has been working on figuring that out. That's like a whole grant with the need for electricity and all kinds of things and Wi-Fi. So that's something we would love to have. Right now, the cameras we have, they capture still images, mostly still images that we log, and then we have our research biologist and our interns go through and kind of categorize, and they use them to kind of examine loon behavior. But yeah, we occasionally capture people picking up loon eggs and doing things they shouldn't do.
I mean, can you take, this may sound, I don't know, a little radical, but can you take that footage and post it online and maybe shame people?
Yeah. I mean,
I know
I'm a little uncomfortable with that, but I do show the images in my presentations. I put the big picture up on the screen and I'm like, don't be this guy. So.
Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great that you can share that. Well, speaking of presentations, you also come to people, right? You guys are on the road a lot. I saw that there's going to be some upcoming presentations at the View Center in Old Forge and Skern Lake, and even way up north in Clayton, New York, which I actually get out the Google map and figure out where that is.
You don't know where Clayton is, Jane?
No, I don't know where Clayton is, Steve. Surprise.
It's a great little spot. You should go visit. It's right on the St. Lawrence River. It's pretty beautiful. Nice.
Well, I'll put it on the list. Is it technically it's not in the Adirondacks though, is it?
Technically it's not, no, but they do have loons up on the St. Lawrence River. And yeah, it's the folks in that area are some of our biggest supporters. So we're really excited to work with them.
Yeah.
They're technically outside the park.
Actually, I believe they're outside of the park, but they're geographically within the geological definition of the Adirondack Park, or the Adirondacks, excuse me, not park. So a lot of people don't realize this, that the formation that makes up the Adirondacks is actually much larger than the Adirondack Park is. And it extends to the St. Lawrence and actually beyond the St. Lawrence into southern Quebec in a place, and then right to the edge of Lake Champlain. And, we talk often a lot about businesses in Washington County or sites in Washington County, and that too is included in it. So the Adirondack Park is one thing, but the entire geological feature that is the Adirondacks is larger than the park.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Very interesting fact, Steve. I did not know that. If anybody who knows me knows that geography is not my strong suit. So if you play Trivial Pursuit with me, always challenge me with the blue pie. But
she was no good at sports either.
Sometimes, sometimes I get the question. Sometimes it's, it's something that I know about, but no, you're right. Orange pie is not my big, strong suit either. This is not the topic we're here to talk about today, Stephen. It's back to your presentations. What kind of topics do you think is really resonating with your audiences right now?
Yeah, so right now, this summer, the biggest one we've had requests for is we have a presentation that we call Our Loons on Thin Ice with Climate Change. So we talk about climate change and the ways that we've seen climate change affecting loons and loon behavior, and just a little bit about some trends, that are predicted to affect the park, the Adirondack Park generally. But yeah, that is hands down, that's the one that I've had the most requests for. I'm really excited about a presentation I'm doing in Skern Lake. I'm going to be working with Debbie Philp, who is the founder of Dancing Turtle Rescue. So she's a turtle expert. She rescues turtles. Right now is the season when turtles are trying to cross the road to look for nesting sites, and they get hit by cars a lot. And she, that's what she does, is she rehabs turtles and tries to get them back out into the wild. So she and I are going to give a joint presentation called A Living Lake. And it's just about how both loons and turtles are necessary for healthy lake ecosystems. And I'm really excited about it because, loons are great. We love loons, but we also want people to understand that loons need a healthy ecosystem to thrive. So I'm excited to work with her, and we're going to kind of present kind of above and below the surface, what we need for healthy lakes. And that'll be in Schroon Lake on July 11th at Schroon Lake High School. And yeah, super excited about that one. It's a new one we've never done before, but I think it'll just be interesting. And she and I will go back and forth talking about, loons and turtles and healthy lakes. So
do you ever put like any, YouTube or recordings of these presentations online that people could access?
We don't at the moment, and I'm not sure. I'd have to check with we have a new executive director this year. So we're kind of going through a lot of change and figuring out kind of maybe new or different ways we want to do things. And so far we haven't. And I think part of that is because we want to get in front of people, and interact with them and talk to them and be able to answer questions. But I don't know if there's any other reason why we haven't. So I'll have to talk to our staff and see if that's something we would like to start doing, especially for one like this, where, this might be the only time we give this presentation. So maybe this would be a good one to start with.
Maybe if you knew somebody who had a podcast on the Adirondacks, they might be able to go record it for you.
There you go.
And I can't think of anybody off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's someone out there.
Or like a brother and sister team. Maybe a brother could do that. Since he's such a smarty pants. Maybe he can help out with that too. Speaking of I will tell you from personal experience. Last fall, I had an opportunity to go and see Dr. Nina Schock. Is that how you say her last name?
Yep, Schock.
Who founded the Center for Loon Conservation, do a presentation on, I think it was courting or nesting habits. And it was packed. It was a rainy, cold November night, and the library was absolutely packed, and the presentation was fantastic. We have lots of listeners that are not in the Adirondacks.
Right.
In fact, the largest percentage of our listeners is in the New York metro area. And as Stephen and I love to point out, we have a very small but loyal following in Frankfurt, Germany.
Frankfurt.
Hey, Frankfurt. So something to think about.
Yeah. And I will say that in the winter, we do virtual presentations. We call them Loon Zooms.
Yeah.
And we do 6 of them every winter, 1 a month. And those are really well attended. And for those Loon Center staff deliver the presentations for usually the first and the last one. And then the 4 in the middle, we get experts from all over the country or the world who give like a guest lecture, a guest presentation. So, those we offer regularly every winter. And it does make me wonder if maybe we offer some of more virtual things online. Maybe that would be a great way for people outside of the area to also connect with us. So good ideas.
I'm full of good ideas. And Steve's full of great ideas that he wants other people to act on and carry out.
Those are the best ideas.
Yes. Do you have a newsletter?
We do have a newsletter. It is a quarterly newsletter. So the next one's supposed to go out in early July. And yeah, we would love to have people sign up for that. We have we send out over 8,000 of them.
Wow.
8,000 emails for our newsletter, but we'd love to send more. And people can sign up for that on our website as well. And yeah, we do it quarterly just to try to not overwhelm people. But each newsletter, we put in there any new news or exciting things coming up, and also any events, and just ways that people can get involved, or opportunities people can take. So we would love to have people sign up and learn more about us that way.
Yeah. And you guys are also on Facebook and Instagram. And I just mentioned all of that because, we keep mentioning your website, but listener, if you want to stay up to date on Loon stuff, have the Loon news come to you either through their newsletter or following them on all the great social media outlets. So we talked about Dr. Nina Schock and how she's now transitioned to being the director of conservation and science, and you have a new executive director, Dorothy Walt. What can you tell us about her?
Oh, Dorothy's great. Yeah, she comes to us from kind of a different world. She was in professional recruiting, and she moved up to the Adirondacks a few years ago from New Jersey. And, she loves the area and saw getting on board with us as a chance to kind of be involved and do some good work. So we've really loved having her on board. It's been a great opportunity for us to expand and to also kind of, it's, small nonprofits. I feel like it's always a moving target.
Right.
We're always trying to kind of meet needs, but also, we're a small staff and trying to figure out how to best utilize everyone's skills. So we've been doing a lot of moving around. We've hired some great seasonal staff who are doing amazing things. And we have 3 interns working with us right now. So yeah, her coming on has allowed us to keep doing the things that we were doing really well already, and also to consider some other ways that we can expand. So it's great. It's been a good year of lots of good positive change. So we're happy to have her.
Nice.
That's great. What are any other special events people should know about that are happening?
Sure. Yeah. This year, we have Art Walk in Saranac Lake on, I think it's the 3rd Thursday of every month. The first one's coming up this week. It's on the 19th. And this year, we always stay open for Art Walk, but this year we're actually going to have some artists who set up inside the Loon Center. So folks that either make loons the center of their art, or they just incorporate loons into their art. So this week we have Tim Souter, who he makes, he's an artist who works with gourds, and he makes like all kinds of animals out of gourds. So he makes loons and all kinds of things. So he'll be here with some of his items for people to look at and to purchase. And then we have a wildlife photographer, Michaela Plouffe, who will be setting up inside the Loon Center. And then our education intern is going to provide a kids activity, a big table where kids can come in and kind of make an art project while they're here as well. So Art Walk is not our event, but it's one that we're trying to kind of engage with people a little bit more during.
That's a great idea. That's a really great idea. And you're also
excited about that.
You're doing a student art contest.
We are, yeah. So
is this a new thing, or
it is brand new? Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So we also hired a seasonal. She's a 6-month employee right now. Her name is Sylvie, as our education and outreach coordinator. And she, specifically we brought her on because we want to do more youth-based activities and more youth-based programming. And me as one person, I can't do it all.
Right.
So Sylvie's joined our team in April, I believe. And one of the first things, she thought of was, let's try to engage some local students in an art contest. So right now it's limited to the Tri-Lakes areas. So Lake Placid, Saranac Lake, Tupper Lake, any students within those kind of regions. And it's middle and high school. There'll be two different awards, an award for a middle school piece of artwork and a high school one. And yeah, we're asking students to consider, what makes the Adirondacks, and however they want to interpret that in some sort of visual art, that's great. And then we just ask if they put a loon in there somewhere. So that's the challenge. But yeah, we kind of wanted to just find a way to connect with students in the region, students in the area, and, encourage them to be creative and to think about, what makes the Adirondacks so unique or so special. And then, the first place high school award will be $1,000, and the first place middle school award will be $500. So, hopefully that's a good amount.
And toward the end of the summer, you're doing your Loon Lakeside barbecue again. I also saw. I spent a lot of time on your website.
There's a lot on there.
Yeah, there sure is. Is that right? Is that right in Saranac Lake, or where is that being hosted?
Yeah, so this year, this is our 2nd annual Loon Lakeside barbecue. So last year it was held on a private property in Tupper Lake, and this year it'll be held at Paul Smith College.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's right there on the Great Lawn. It's our big fundraiser, fun food, lots of great people socializing. We're going to have an auction and, all kinds of things. So the main event is at the Great Lawn on Paul Smith College. There's also a pre-event that is limited admission. That's from 2:30 to 3:30, and it'll be at the historic St. Gabriel's Church in Paul Smith. And that will be just like a chance for a smaller group of people. Again, it's limited admission to get together and kind of have like a pre-event cocktail.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, that's like our big fundraiser, and we have tickets. Tickets are on sale. Registration is up now. Again, you can find all that on our website. And then in October we have the Loon Celebration, which is a free event, free admission event where we have a presentation, we have a loon calling contest. This year we're really looking at, we want to have some like carnival style games for people to play, and just a chance to socialize, listen to music, eat some good food, learn about loons. And that'll be held at the Paul Smith's Vic, or the Visitor Interpretive Center. So that's in October, and that's also when we'll announce the winners of the student art contest. So those are two big events we have.
Yeah.
Paul Smith's, listeners, Paul Smith's is about, what is it, 10 or 15 miles north of Saranac Lake?
Yeah, about 15 miles, yep.
Yeah, and it's the only 4-year college within the Blue Line. So just a little more trivia for you. Not as interesting or in-depth as Steve's trivia, but just a little fact for you. Okay, speaking of trivia or facts, we have a couple rapid fire questions for you.
Okay.
So, what's the weirdest fact you know about loons?
Oh man, I don't know if it's like weird, but it's something that I think is really cool. And that is, loons they're unique because they're diving birds, right? They are evolved to be underwater. And I think something really cool that I've recently learned about loons is that when they are diving underwater, their feathers in their body kind of interact or interlock, and they can trap air to help them float, or they can squeeze the air out to help them sink.
Oh, wow.
And I just think that's kind of cool. I don't know. I wouldn't have thought that.
That is very cool. And just a reminder, loons are not ducks, they're birds. So I think that's also a misconception that people have. So that's a good one. Do loons really mate for life, or is that just good PR?
Loons do not mate for life.
Oh.
No, I know some people are very disappointed.
Sad.
I think this presents great opportunities though for loons. So yeah, they do mate long term, and they will have like a long-term partner, but they are not opposed to switching partners. And I think the average is they have like 4 different mates over the course of their life.
Oh, wow.
So
wow.
And they can live to be 40 years old. So,
Yeah, they're very long-lived. I did not realize it could be up to, some are they're polyamorous.
Yes.
That's funny. If loons could tweet in social media or post on social media, what do you think they'd say?
Oh man, I am the worst tweeter. So I never got into it myself. So I'm not sure what a loon would say. Probably leave me alone or
back off.
Keep a little distance.
And then what's one thing about loon conservation most people don't know but really should?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I don't know if it's something people don't know, but I do think it's something that maybe gets overlooked, is that, we love loons. We love when people love loons. There's lots of people who are really passionate about loons, and kind of our bigger conservation message, and kind of what I look at loons as like a gateway species. You love loons, and then we can like also talk about the whole ecosystem, right? And I think, we love loons so much, but loons can't thrive and they can't live the way they need to live unless they have a healthy habitat and a healthy ecosystem. And that includes all the other species that live in that habitat or that part of that ecosystem. So, again, not a thing I think most people, like, if they think about it, are like, oh, that makes sense. But I do think sometimes we love loons so much that we want to focus on just them. And really, sometimes the way to keep them the healthiest is to address the entire habitat. So I hope that made sense. But
no, that makes a ton of sense. We've had a couple of people on lately. We had the Lake George Land Conservancy, which is about protecting the water on Lake George. It was also a fascinating listener. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. But it's I don't know if there are loons on Lake George. Yeah, I bet there are. But they talked a lot about how important marshland is, and how people often think of beavers as being destructive, but there's benefits for what beavers do. So it's like a whole is greater than the sum of the parts, So it's really important that all these things work together.
Yeah. And I mean, something like when we were talking earlier about shoreline development, something that a lot of people don't realize is like dragonflies like eat mosquitoes. And dragonflies literally can't hatch their eggs unless they have shoreline grasses. that's where they like lay their eggs, and that's kind of their like that's their hatchery, and so it's all these little things that that's a benefit. That's something that we would benefit from, right? I want all those mosquitoes, not all of them, a lot of them to get eaten, but all these ways that the habitat really it serves everything. So soil, bogs, forests, native shoreline, beaver dams, they're all important. So
yeah. And last question, kind of on a serious note, if one of our listeners sees a loon in distress, what should they do?
That's a great one. Yeah. So the big signs that a loon is in distress in the summer here, it's fishing line entanglement. So if you see a loon that is obviously tangled in fishing line, that is a loon in distress. Also, the other big one is grounded loons. So we don't really know why loons might land on land instead of in the water. But as I mentioned, they can't walk on land, and they need a quarter mile of water to take off.
Yeah.
So if you see a loon on land, that is a loon in distress. It will starve to death, or something will come by and eat it opportunistically because it can't really move. So those are the two big ones. And if you do see a loon that is tangled in fishing line or is on the ground on the road, you can call us, or you can send us an email at rescue@adkloon.org. If you want to call the office, since we are now open 7 days a week from 10 to 5, if you can call between then, somebody should be here. And our number is 518-354-8636. So if you call, the things we're going to ask are, where the location of the loon in distress, what exactly you saw, if it's possible to take a photo or a short video of the loon that can help us, just to kind of assess the situation. And then we do have loon rescue volunteers, people who have gone through loon rescue training all over the park. So we'll start connecting with those folks and figure out who can respond to hopefully capture the loon and then get it to us up here where we can take care of it. Fishing line entangled loons, hopefully we can remove any hooks and untangle it and treat any wounds. And then usually those birds are fine when we let them go again. So yeah, those are the two big threats that, we get calls for. There's one behavior that people sometimes mistake as a loon in distress, and that is when loons are bathing and preening. So when they're out in the water and they are thrashing around and sometimes splashing and rolling over on their backs and sticking their feet up in the air, and it can look like it's a loon in distress, but that's actually very normal bathing behavior. They bathe kind of violently or aggressively. So yeah, sometimes people say this loon is acting strange, and we have to be like, well, define strange, describe what you're seeing. And a lot of times it's actually a loon that's just aggressively bathing itself. So
it's the loon being a loon.
It's a loon being a loon.
So Denise, you're a nonprofit, or the Adirondacks Center for Loon Conservation is a not-for-profit. So how can people support the organization?
Yeah, we are a small nonprofit, so we rely on outside funding to do all the work we do. Kind of, so a big way for people to help out or to contribute to that work is just through donations. We rely on lots of donations from lots of people to do all of our research, conservation, education, and all of our programs that are associated with those arms of our work. An example, for how all these funds get put to use is, I mentioned earlier that we hired a 6-month education coordinator this year because we wanted to do more youth programs. And basically, just by hiring that extra staff person, she was able to interact with over 1,000 students in just 4 days. By doing all kinds of fun interactive lessons about bioaccumulation and just really cool stuff that without that staff position, we just don't have the capacity to do that. So we're hoping to make her position a full-time one so that we can continue doing kind of youth programming all throughout the whole academic year and just really expand what we're able to offer. But I offer that up as just an example of how, with just a little bit of money, we can, hire an entire person who can then make all these other things possible. So that's donations go a long way to helping us do the work we do. So that's probably the biggest way people can help out. Also, by doing any of our programs, we do our guided paddles. People do pay for those, and again, every dollar we make just goes right back into our programming. So we really appreciate the generosity of anybody who donates towards our work. So
that's awesome. Yeah. Denise, is there any last parting thought you want to leave with our listeners before I we get to our wrap-up question?
I don't know. I guess just, that we love it that so many people, love loons, and that loons allow people to, or invite people to kind of appreciate, the whole natural environment. The Adirondacks is a special place. It's unique. It's unique in the United States, and loons are kind of unique in the United States as well. So we're really happy that people can see, loons in the Adirondacks, and we hope that just helps people love and appreciate this place and care for it. So that would be my parting thought.
That's awesome. Nice. Thank you for all you do. We love loons. And I always look forward to when they return in the spring and to hear the call on the lake, or I love just, if it's really early in the morning or at night, just, it's so beautiful. And we see them when we go out, usually in the evening, like around 6 o'clock, when we take a little cocktail cruise on our boat, and we always make sure we stay far away. But Steve actually is a great photographer and has really captured them from a distance. I've taken great pictures with my iPhone from far away using the zoom. So you don't need to get too close in order to really appreciate them, see them, and if you want to photograph them, take pictures of them too. Okay, so Denise, as you may remember from your last appearance on 80K Talks, we always like to ask our guests to give us and our listeners their insider tips for great places to stay, see, shop, do in the Adirondacks. Last time you mentioned the Adirondack chain, the canoe trail.
Yeah.
And so you can't say that again.
Okay, I can't say that one.
and you can't say the Adirondacks Center for Loon Conservation either.
Oh, darn it. Okay.
But now that you've been here, though, because I think last time we talked, you had moved up here. You moved from Oregon or the state of Washington.
Yep,
from the
Oregon.
Pacific,
Yep,
Oregon from the Pacific Northwest. So you've had a couple more months to get, 9 more months to sort of get acclimated to the Adirondacks. What would you say now?
Yeah, so, I'll go with my love of a good brewery.
All right.
There
we go.
Came here from Oregon, so I'm very, very in particular about my breweries. But I really like Racket River Brewing in Tupper Lake.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think personally, it feels very West Coasty to me. So,
really?
Because you sit outside, you have the food trucks, it's really good beer, lots of different options. And I don't know, it's my favorite one to go to. So I recommend Racket River Brewing in Tupper Lake. And they also have a little like a tap room in Lake Placid, but sometimes we go to if we just, don't want to drive all the way to Tupper Lake. But yeah, it's great beer and just a great atmosphere. So I like that one.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with you. They've got a huge outdoor space if you want to be outdoors. The food trucks are awesome, really good food. And then, in colder weather, they have a pretty large tasting room that you can be inside too. So that's a great one to mention.
Cool.
All right. Well, Denise, thank you again for joining us on 80K Talks. As always, I learned so much from you. And I think this is going to have to be a standing thing going forward because people,
I'm all for it.
Great. People love loons. And listener, definitely, if you're going to be in Saranac Lake, make sure you stop in because it's a really cool place to visit. So Denise, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
You as well.
Wow. I learned a lot in that episode.
Yeah. Oh.
They're doing so many amazing things at the Center for Loon Conservation. And I really, at the risk of repeating myself too much, it's a great place to visit. They've got great information on their website.
The point you made about it being, on the smaller side. So you're not going to spend the whole day. You're going to spend a couple hours, but all those little local museums, pocket museums, as you refer to them. I find it's a way I've been able to entice my lovely wife to take a trip some places. Oh, let's go visit something that I know she would be interested in, maybe a particular store or a little museum, and then incorporate one of the little brew pubs along the way and say, I get a couple beers out of this. We can check in some local history and flavor and move along. So what you might think of as a 45-minute visit to a small museum that isn't necessarily worth an hour drive, an hour and a half drive, but you've got easily 2 or 3 other things that you can incorporate that into that trip and thus make an afternoon or a day out of it if you want.
Yeah. I mean, Saranac Lake's not that far, from where we are in the Lake George area, Warren County or Scroon Lake, or it's also, if you're coming from Old Forge, it's not that far either. So it's kind of
anywhere in the Adirondacks.
Anywhere in the Adirondacks. And there's a lot to do, as you said, and not to beat a dead horse, but there's plenty of things to do. There's really good restaurants for lunch and dinner. There's, I really like that. I think it's called Bitters and Bones. Has a really nice roof deck. So great place to go in the summer. Also, they're open all year round. And we mentioned the Trudeau Laboratory Museum, which is really, really interesting too. Hotel Saranac, we've talked about that. That's come up. It's a great place to stay. They have some nice places to eat there, and it's haunted. So it's a great thing to do.
All the better.
All the better. The rain has finally stopped here. I feel like we bring that up on every episode this spring. And I feel like the smoke is starting to clear from the Canadian wildfires. Is that true? What is it? It doesn't seem as heat.
I've noticed that it does. I mean, I'm looking out the window now, and it's not as hazy, but considering the size of the fires, it's interesting how it's almost becoming an annual event.
Yeah.
Whereas it was something that would happen every 5 or 6 years. We might get notice the unexpected haze on a day that we thought was going to be perfectly sunny. And now it seems almost every year we're getting these infiltration of smoke, non-terrible.
Ugh. Yeah. All right. I think that's going to do it for this episode. Any parting thoughts from you, Steve Areno?
No, I'm good. Okay. Watch out for the loons.
Yep.
Give them a wide berth.
Give the loons a wide berth. Okay, listener, thank you for tuning in to 80K Talks. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps others discover more insight and information about the amazing and incredible Adirondack Park. You can also visit us at 80ktaste.com. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter. You're not going to get a bunch of spam from us. And you can also learn about all new news and insights. Until next time, keep exploring and enjoying the amazing Adirondacks. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.